days with our friend Niels. And if you were following along on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of our social media, hopefully it was fun for you. It was fun to play Willy Wonka for 10 days with a kid who was a sports fan who saved my wife's life and who had never been to America. So we had a pretty good time with him. It included lots of basketball, included lots of football. I certainly watched some hockey. But all eyes on baseball if you're an Orioles fan in this time of the year where you see other teams trying to improve. And hopefully the Orioles will be one of those teams. In the Mark Trumbo situation, not a shocker. Quite frankly, Alan McCallum, nothing the Orioles do is ever a shock to me anymore. Nothing that the political system provided in the last 7 days has been after we've seen what's happened here, I guess that there are no shocks left. Mark Trumbo apparently won't be an Oriole next year, huh?
If you think you've seen it all, the last, 2 weeks you saw the Cubs win 100 after 108 years, and wow, the presidential elections. Many have talked about it. I don't know if we need to do it here, but certainly the Orioles are in a situation right now where they have some massive decisions to make, from players that are going to represent them on the field to the people that are going to shepherd their young players up in the organization to the guys who are going to teach the guys making big bucks at the major league level. So there's certainly some forming of their futures happening right now. We'll see what happens as we go through the offseason.
Well, and this has been a franchise that has traditionally, with Duquette and with the goofball that owns the team, speaking of goofballs, that own the team, rich goofballs, they're not going to do anything really big at all. And if they do anything, it'll be on the leftover damaged aisle, Giovanni Gallardo Jimenez at the end of the rope sometime after the Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's what they've done here recently. They've gone and shopped late amidst leftovers in general, right?
Well, certainly from the pitching standpoint, that's what they've done. And I think we can certainly agree that what they've ended up with out of that has been pretty poor. We've talked about Dan Duquette for a long time, and I've said to you on several occasions that I think his approach is ridiculous. It certainly hasn't benefited the team, and all you have to do is look at the pitchers that aren't here for the big money. He ended up in loss of draft picks that he's given up in the process to know that it really doesn't work. So, I think a trade, I could see them making a trade to bring in something big, but in terms of free agency, I think the statements they've already put out there that they're not planning to make any big pitching moves sort of sends a signal that they're not going to spend a ton of money right now. Most of the lineup is fairly locked in. You certainly can look at the DH and right field positions and say they have some room to maneuver and make some decisions. I know they were talking about Trumbo being more the DH as opposed to right fielder, so I would assume that means they're looking for someone who can handle on base percentage and maybe leadoff spot. But frankly, the best guy out there for that is the guy that turned them down last year. So it would not surprise me if this team looks fairly similar to the one that won 89 games in 2016.
All right, so let's talk about Trumbo and the differences between offense and defense and chicks digging the long ball and winning games, and how do you replace that? And I guess we asked that question when Nelson Cruz went bye-bye, right? And we would have been asking that about Chris Davis, although he didn't go bye-bye, and they gave him, he's the guy that hit the lottery. He's the guy that pulled the arm at the jackpot at the right time. Very, very unlikely, considering the last time they were in the playoffs, he was not a factor because of a drug suspension. But Trumbo's not going to get the money here, and I'm not all up in arms about these rentals. I'm just wondering, what do you do next?
Well, I'm not positive that Trumbo's not going to be here. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up signing him, because
I don't think they're going to give him $65 million, though. I don't.
Well, but the problem is I don't think anybody else is either, because that's not the player.
We could say that about Wieters now. We could say that about a lot of guys, but
somebody
there's 29 other teams out there, man. You know this better than I do. What sounds like really stupid talk in November after these guys all get together and have too many drinks down in D.C. in a couple of weeks, and on the back end, and they put their portfolio together. He'll get 3 years and $47 million. He'll get some. He's going to get some real money. Someone's going to have to marry Mark Trumbo. I don't think they're going to be able to date him again.
I can see 3 years and 45, sort of 3 at 15. I can see that happening. But the problem is that his track record sort of speaks for itself. That on-base percentage isn't his big thing. He strikes out a ton. From a defensive standpoint, he doesn't really offer you anything except theoretically some versatility.
You're saying all the things we said about him when they signed him last year, except dude hit 50 home runs.
Okay, but I mean, so if he goes back to Seattle, how many home runs is he going to hit? He's going to hit 47? I doubt it. If he goes to a National League park that isn't Cincinnati or Colorado or, I don't know, pick one, is he going to do that? I would actually tell you that it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Wieters gets a bigger contract than Mark Trumbo, because, frankly, he can do a little more in terms of handling a pitching staff. He has a reputation of being able to handle pitching staff. His arm, while not bouncing back to where it was pre-surgery, he certainly was still in the upper echelon of guys throwing out runners for Major League Baseball. And the team that he caught for the majority of the season won 89 games with a horrible pitching staff, and he can go out and sell that. And he's one of the more prolific home run hitting catchers. Certainly not a 25 or 30 home run guy. He didn't have that kind of year last year, but there aren't many out there right now that aren't already under contract. He gives you some different options. If you're picking up Mark Trumbo, he's a DH and occasional position player. If you can stick him in the outfield, but he's just going to sort of catch the balls that he can get to as opposed to being a plus defender. And at first base, I guess he's okay, but frankly, we haven't really seen him much there in the last 3 or 4 years. Quite frankly, since Albert Pujols took over first base first time in Anaheim. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up back here because he goes out and finds out that the contract he's looking for isn't available from anybody, and the Orioles will overpay what he's actually worth because they like him. I'll be honest. I am in much more favor of going out and re-signing Pedro Alvarez, who's a left-handed bat, who can take a walk. He's certainly going to strike out a ton, but I think he's seen the league now, so I think that transition period in the first half, we saw a little bit of downtime, but once he sort of got a look at the league, he had a much better second half. And given the fact that Buff didn't play him much, I think his numbers would improve if he got more playing time. Looks like they want to have him against right-handed pitchers only, which creates an opening for Trey Mancini or Christian Walker, whoever they end up giving that opportunity to. But they've got to get cheaper. They've got to be more flexible. So if you have an opportunity where you sign Pedro Alvarez, he's not going to cost as much as Mark Trumbo because he didn't hit 47 home runs, but he might ultimately put up the same kind of numbers when it's all said and done, get on base more, be more productive. No, he's not going to help you much in the field, but you have a couple of guys that would allow you to move in and make your team a little bit more dynamic along the way. And you would have some extra money to sign maybe a pitcher or a right fielder that can hit leadoff. So I think it gives you more flexibility. I think it gives you an opportunity to bring some of your young guys along so that if they prove to be ready, you can make some moves in the future. So I think it does. To me, it doesn't make sense to lock themselves into yet another guy who's going to strike out a ton, never get on base, and hit a ton of balls out of Camden Yards, which is a pretty easy thing to do, quite frankly.
Well, if it's so easy, we'd all be doing it. And obviously, if it's so easy assembling these teams, we'd all be winning like the Cubs and having that warm, fuzzy feeling that they're having right now. But the rest of the teams are trying to build. And I guess from the pitching standpoint, this is the best the pitching's looked in a couple of years, right? Like, if you believe in Gausman, if you believe in Bundy, if you think Tillman's an is, then you at least say, well, there's part of the top, there's the mess of all the money left behind and the shame of it all with Gallardo and Jimenez, but, again, it ain't my money. Mr. Angelos is just borrowing the franchise from all of us anyway at this point. But you never have enough pitching. And as I sit here and I look at it and say, well, pitching's okay. I thought the pitching was okay when it was Chen and Gonzalez and these other guys, but it's never okay, is it?
A team that is satisfied with the pitching staff that it has is a team that's going to be going down soon. You're always looking to improve. There's no question about that. Look, close your eyes for a split second. Let's not. Let's not talk about Jake Arrieta. Let's not talk about anybody. But let's, for a minute, pause and consider that this team could very easily have Chris Tillman, Kevin Gosman, Dylan Bundy, Miguel Gonzalez, and Zach Davies in its rotation with Ubaldo Jimenez as a swing guy, the most expensive pitcher on the roster. I realize that, but still as a swing guy, and they'd be in pretty good shape. You'd have three young guys in Davies, Bundy, and Gosman who could sort of shepherd you into your future, with Tillman certainly not old to anchor, and Miguel Gonzalez is just the workman guy that every pitching staff needs. And you're talking about one or two decisions away from having that happen, but that's not the case. And they have two spots that they really need to figure out while hoping that Tillman and Gosman and Bundy can stay healthy. Bundy basically threw more than we've seen him as a professional last year, and that was with them nursing him along. And he suffered at the end of the season. They had to sort of slow him down. So I mean, there are certainly no guarantees that these guys. Gosman's had some kind of injury that slowed him down through basically every season of his major league career. Tillman's been pretty healthy, but suffered a setback last year that might have cost him the division in the weeks in August and September where he was out. So I mean, you just look at the tenuous nature of a team whose rotation won 89 games, or whose pitching staff won them 89 games, and it's pretty obvious to see that they can't just stand pat, because there's no guarantee that any of those things are going to work out again from a health standpoint, from a productivity standpoint. Now, you could very well argue that Ivani Gallardo gets a little stronger with the shoulder, and that Ubaldo Jimenez has a great first half. He's sort of due to have that happen and then suffer in the second half. And maybe the team gets off to a big start and runs away with it. I mean, is it likely? No. Is it impossible? No, it's not at all. I mean, they have a couple of options in theory, but they've got five guys, and they need a couple more, because I think we were all agreed that the Mike Wrights of the world are not the answer. So while Duquette talks about standing pat in terms of not going out and getting big signings, we've seen him in the past, and this is when he was at his best, quite frankly, going out and finding the smart deal as opposed to giving it up. And he needs to go out and be creative like that again this year to help this pitching staff. And again, quite frankly, I think that they should stay away from signing a big money free agent like Trumbo and find some more creative options.
A lot of teams this time of year are out pimping their big three in their organization. They've got a shortstop coming, or an outfielder coming, or a pitcher coming, or a catcher, something, right? What are you selling me, Alan? And when you're having organizational meetings, if this team had an owner that was sort of on top of things, shall we say, the one thing around baseball that's not a secret is this franchise has no depth. It has not much to talk about at the lower levels or at the mid-levels. We've seen that in the trading deadline deals, especially this year, where they could have used some help and didn't really have anything to give up. And I know the Yankees have now filled their cupboard, by sort of giving a season away, and they wound up not giving much away at all. They wound up playing okay down the stretch, and if not for anything, the role of some sort of spoiler. But if you're a Yankees fan right now, and I spent a couple days in New York earlier this week and was thinking about this, because I heard some baseball on the lips of people, because I don't hear that in Baltimore so much these days, but I heard some people talking baseball because I was at Madison Square Garden, and it feels like the Yankees are going to come back and rise up again because of all of these guys they're talking about, that it might not be next year, but over the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to see the real benefits of their trading day deadline.
Yeah, I don't think it's next year. I think they rode a hot streak with some young guys before the league got to figure them out, and then we saw a combination of the league figuring them out and just sort of hitting the wall at some point that really slowed them down. And quite frankly, the trade of Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman just killed their bullpen, so they lost a lot of games late. So I think next year might be a difficult one for them, but look out for 2018 and 2019. In terms of the Orioles, again, what the process that Dan Duquette has undertaken here has left the cupboard bare, where you're talking about, again, not letting go of draft picks for Ubaldo Jimenez and Ivani Gallardo. I mean, just pause and reflect on that for a second. And then making deals, trading, letting guys go that would have helped this team, or certainly helped to give some of the young guys that are at the lower minor leagues a little bit more time. So, I mean, really what you're talking about at this point is hoping that Dylan Bundy comes to fruition, but he's already at the major league level. You're hoping that Hunter Harvey is what they think and say he is, and that he can stay healthy and show that. And then you're basically talking about Trey Mancini and Chance Sisco. There's not a lot of much left after that. I mean, there are certainly some young guys with some good arms at the minor league level that have turned some heads, but I think all of them are seen as very raw talents that are at least 2 or 3 years away. So, I mean, there's no immediate help past those names. I mean, Christian Walker's shown some flashes at the minor league level, but has never gotten an opportunity, and some would probably say that there's a reason for that. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about Trey Mancini, Chance Sisco, and Hunter Harvey. And, I mean, frankly, you're talking about a couple guys. Chance Sisco is the one that's going to have the best opportunity to show something next year, and nobody really knows whether he's ready defensively. And then the other 2 guys are blocked, basically by Chris Davis at first base. And if they do bring back either Pedro Alvarez or Mark Trumbo in some version of that, then they're blocked largely at DH as well. So at that point, you're looking at Manny Machado, you're looking at Jonathan Scope, as sort of the anchors of what youth there is.
Well, the Machado contract sort of looms over all of this, right? I mean, in the background, all of this is ticky-tack, but if you got to give a guy $300-400 million to keep him around, you better start having that Tampa Bay replacement plan somewhere, or get on the phone with him, right? Because that's what it's going to take at some point to sign Manny Machado.
So I'm sure you've heard a lot of discussion about the movement in the fan base to trade Manny Machado, in the sense that no one believes that the Orioles are going to do what it takes to sign him long term,
yeah.
And that the haul you could get for him right now is pretty significant. And I got to tell you, I mean, there's certainly room to consider that, because it's hard to imagine that they would sign him, given the way that they've handled their business. So you certainly don't do it for a nothing deal. But if you get bowled over by somebody, I think you have to consider that. So, I mean, you still have Adam Jones is still young enough that he can help you for another 2 or 3 years, probably moving to a corner position in the next year or two. Chris Davis is locked in whether he can help you or not for another 6 seasons. You hope that Chance Sisco
say that again. Chris Davis is locked in for another 6 seasons. Say that. I mean, you know, I mean, that really. That tells you what they did last offseason, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the reality. And look, even if he's at his best for 3 of those 6, we're talking somewhere around 35 to 45 home runs. Pretty good play at first base. Good base running, but you're always fighting to get him on base with a ton of strikeouts. So, I mean, I have mixed feelings about Chris Davis. I mean, he's certainly, when he's productive, he's as dangerous as anybody in the game. And defensively, I think he should have gotten a lot more consideration at first base as a Gold Glove winner. He was fantastic all year. But there were reasons that I didn't think that he was the right guy to bring back. I think we saw that through a lot of this season. And
that felt like an Angelos decision more than
probably
an organizational decision.
But long term,
that's why I have a hard time judging Duquette. I mean, I know you like to hose him down even more so than I. And look, I don't like the guy. The guy's been an ass to me. He's been a jerk. But beating up on him, the old man went and gave Davis the money. I mean, the old man's going to do whatever he wants to do this offseason. So
yeah, but I don't think that Ivani Gallardo and Ubaldo Jimenez were ultimately Peter Angelos' decisions. Do you?
No, I don't.
I think that let me put it this way: Doug Fister or Ivani Gallardo, one you get it 1 year with no loss draft pick, and another you give up a ton of draft. You give up a draft pick, you give him a ton of money, and you're locked in for more years. So how does that because you waited. This whole thing is we're going to wait until there's nobody else left. I mean, that literally destroys all of your options, all of your flexibility, all of the ability to sort of evaluate what's out there and make some decisions to give you some gift in your organization. And I'm sorry, Ness. I mean, Peter Angelos, whatever you think about him, I mean, there's been several general managers, and he's been around for over 20 years, and this has started with Duquette. So, I mean, that approach is a purely Dan Duquette thing. The organization prior to him, with Andy McPhail, Andy went out and got stuff done early, so that there was some option, some opportunity, and you can make some savvy deals. Now, as I've said, I mean, starting pitching was the thing that he had trouble going out and getting. I recognize that. But it's not like after 2012 that Duquette's done a bang-up job with that. I mean, the last really sort of quality move that you could look at from a starting pitching standpoint is Bud Norris, and that happened in 2013. So, I mean, it's been a little bit of time now. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I think that the organization is certainly more peril's probably not the right word, given the fact that they won 89 games and got to the postseason and had been there for 3 of the last 5 years. But an organization that's not set up to be successful long term because the approach he's taken has been a short-sighted one.
Well, and here we go again. It's an off season. I guess that's why we're here talking about it, because these are the moves, and where is the ideology? I mean, I cover the Ravens for a living. February and March, when it rolls around, Ozzie and Bisciotti get up in front of everybody, and you at least sort of, they address, like, we need to go get a safety. We need to have this happen. This is the contract situation with this guy. This is the contract situation with that guy. They're a little more transparent about it. This does feel a little bit like a fire drill sometimes, the way the organization operates in the offseason, quite frankly.
I remember in 2011, the Orioles needed a third baseman and a shortstop. And within the first couple of days of the winter meetings, they had J.J. Hardy and Mark Reynolds in hand. Now, J.J. Hardy is still here and has been a long-term staple of success for this organization. I don't know anybody that would argue that. And Mark Reynolds couldn't play third base and has been a journeyman guy ever since. But certainly his bat helped get them to the playoffs in 2012. My point is that he saw a need, he went out and addressed it. In a way that was productive for the organization, that didn't cost them a ton of money. Because there was so much, the market was still flooded with players looking for contracts, and organizations still trying to make good deals, find the right thing for themselves. There's more when you have more on the board, you have more directions you can go. And when you pigeonhole yourself into a situation where there's no other move to make for this one guy that nobody wants, or at least not enough to give him the kind of money that the Orioles end up giving these guys. I mean, how is that a productive move? And I'll say again, love Peter Angelos, hate Peter Angelos. That's not a Peter Angelos decision. That is an approach that Dan Duquette has decided to make that doesn't make any sense and has cost them draft picks and contracts that were poorly defined, and put them into situations where they didn't have the kind of flexibility that he created for them in 2012 that really helped get them to the playoffs.
He is Alan McCallum. Alan at WNST.net is the way to find him. We're going to talk Oriole baseball here in the offseason as we get it going. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net, as well as in the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. You can download the TuneIn Radio app and listen. Also, our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com. Last but never least, when there's breaking news like hiring pitching coaches, like Mark Trumbo, and qualifying offers, all of that happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.